Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box Perspective podcast. Not only am I joined by my good friend Matt, but we've also got a very special guest. Ryan McGregor's here with us to talk a lot of things Blackhawks and maybe a tiny bit wild. But how are you doing today, Matt?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Again, we've got Ryan here today with us. Thank you very much for being here with us, man. We really, really appreciate it. How's everything over in Vancouver? You keeping well?
Yeah, everything's great over here. A lot of rain. Finally getting out of the rain now, but a lot of rain over here. So, yeah, things are going okay. Same old.
Good stuff. So just to start us off, so you run the Blackhawks Conversation. I just wanted to give you the floor for our listeners just off the bat. Just tell us a bit about yourself, Ryan, and what you do, and your connection to the Blackhawks, and obviously being a fan from Canada and everything. Just the floor is yours, bud. Tell us about Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Lifelong Blackhawks fan. Obviously not living in Chicago, living over here in Vancouver. So, Blackhawks fan since I was a little kid, and the whole reason I started the show was to feel closer to other Blackhawks fans. Obviously, not having any out here, right? So, wanted to kind of feel like part of that community, and that was kind of the reason to start the show. And from there, it's through a lot of trial and error and figuring out what I like, what I don't. It's kind of turned into primarily a post game show. There's live watch-alongs as well on there, so it's kind of a good hub for Blackhawks fans, and that's kind of what it's turned into over the course of this season.
Yeah, and I can certainly say, I mean, I tuned into a lot of your post game shows. I always think it's a nice little barometer, because it's a difficult position for us because we don't get the privilege of watching a lot of the games live unless we stay up very late. Right. So quite often I will catch a lot of stuff like the following morning if it's been sort of late into the night. So I'll usually hop across to to yourself and CHGO, and obviously I know you spoke with Jay recently and you had him on, which was it was an absolutely fantastic interview as well. And I always think my barometer of how much I'm crashing out over the result can sometimes sometimes I feel nice and validated from other people's post game reactions and everything like that. But no, that's really cool, and especially like you said, obviously being where you are, you are smack bang in the middle of Canuck territory, as well as I'm sure there's fans of all the Canadian teams around you, I'm sure. So it must feel pretty isolating. But no, it's really cool, and I can maybe smile when you said the kind of trial and error thing. Obviously, we're in our first season here, and there's been a lot of things, a lot of trial and error, and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and trying to just kind of polish everything over the course of the year. But no, it's really cool. I like it a lot. I think your formula has been absolutely smashing. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess I say all the time like, oh, I'm so far, trying to cover the team from far away. It's nothing compared to you guys. So props to you guys for, like you said, the dedication to stay in the loop even when the hours are not ideal. Definitely props to you guys.
But the games for you at midday, don't they?
Yeah, I'm 2 hours behind Chicago, so their home game's typically at 7, so it's 5 o'clock for me. So it's not too bad. It's actually nice. I can get the night wrapped up pretty early compared to that time
Why
zone.
not the Canucks then?
I was a Canucks fan for ages. Gotta have been 3 to 6, maybe 7 years old, somewhere in there. So about 4 or 5 years, the Canucks fan, and I didn't know about any other teams. I would just watch them on the local channel on the TV. Play a bunch of hockey, but I didn't really know about any other teams. And then one of the neighborhood buddies I would play hockey with, he was like, hey, there's all these other teams out here. Like, we need a new team. I was like, all right, sure, let's do it. Why not? And so we went online and we looked up which team at the time had the most Canadian players, and that's how we chose. And it happened to be the Blackhawks, and I just stuck with it. Ended up being a good choice. The dynasty then happened shortly after, so just stuck with it since.
Canadian players.
Yeah. I don't know why that was our reasoning. I mean, we were just kids, but I'm glad it was. It worked out.
Yeah, it's no, that's great, and we get asked ourselves, and even I know that you asked me as well, especially with us being based in the UK, it's like how do we choose like which US or Canadian teams we follow, where quite often like we've got very little in the way of connection. And obviously I was saying to you, and I've said it on here before, that I literally just got into it through the NHL video games. I do happen to have some family in the Chicago area, which kind of helped me like solidify my choice. But even like yourself, Nathaniel, like you kept like quite a close eye on Calgary for a few years, and then when you got like back into the sport more like consistently, you just sort of like resonated with Minnesota. And there's no reason as to why we decide to choose these. Quite often it's just like it's just a completely random coming together, as opposed to like like football, soccer teams over here. Quite often it's our parents or our parents' parents or where we're from, or it's a lot easier to kind of get lined up with a football team over here than it is to necessarily for like US sports, etc.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of that over here with the Canadian teams. A lot of generational, passing along fandom. So a lot of that with Canucks fans and even Leafs fans in Vancouver. I mean, Leafs fans are everywhere in Canada, but a lot in
Poor
Vancouver.
guys. Poor guys.
Oh man, it's one of my best buddies is a Leafs fan. I've stopped ragging on him. I just feel bad at this point. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been so long of
reaches,
just suffering.
It reaches a point, doesn't it, where it's like, at one point it's just kicking a guy while he's down. At that point, it's just like you've just been stomping on him all year. And no, one of my buddies
fair,
is
for most Leaf fans, you're stomping on them after they've like squared up to you nose to nose and told them that their team's better than yours.
Yeah,
so that's why
true.
I don't tend to feel bad stomping on them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That is true.
So we're coming up to the the closing of the NHL regular season. Obviously, teams clinching left and right, and we've covered the wild card race this year has been super tight, and it's one of the closest seasons that I can recall, certainly in the last few years, where you're going into the final couple of games and there really is like a lot on the line. Obviously, I know we've seen like the likes of Detroit and St. Louis kind of fall out of the race. The Sharks have kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit as well. But what have been your and the Islanders as well, Jesus.
But
what have been your
yeah,
it's been a monumental fall off. What have been your thoughts on the league this year, and obviously with the playoffs coming up? Have you got kind of, is there a team that you're going to particularly keep an eye on during the playoffs, or do you have any like sleeper picks or anything like that?
Well, ever since Kane got traded from the Hawks, I've been rooting for him in Detroit, but these March collapses, I mean, they're just predictable now at this point. So that's the team I would have root for there. Got to cheer for Canadian team though. Like as much as a Hawks fan, I don't want to give Montreal much credit, but what they're doing over there is so fun. I mean, they're such an electric team to watch. But it's been crazy the race this year, like you were saying. I was talking to a buddy yesterday, and the LA Kings, with 2 games to go, can still win the division, but can also miss the playoffs, which is just shows how crazy this year has been. It really comes down to the last game, and this is probably one of the craziest years I remember too, in terms of tightness coming up to the end of the season.
Yeah, and they could win their division with like the least, like the regulation wins on that Kings team has just been absolutely ridiculous. It just seems like every single night they're going to OT or to a shootout or anything like that. It's been crazy. I mean, obviously I've got an investment in the Minnesota Wild for Nathaniel's sake, because a happy podcast partner equals a happy podcast. And I know but it's not going to be easy for them, obviously, having to overcome Dallas in that first round and then potentially obviously the Avalanche after that. But I really think I'm really excited to see what the Sabres can do. They've ever since Kekalainen came into the GM's role, that really marked a massive turnaround for them. And they're such an unknown entity that I don't know if the lack of experience is going to get them, or whether or you know, whether or not they're just going to be completely underestimated by whoever faces them. It's going to make for some fantastic viewing, nonetheless.
Oh yeah, they're the team to watch this year for sure. It's so exciting seeing them back in the playoffs, and that building is just electric. I mean, it's going to be nuts in Game 1.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I saw all the footage of the beer sabers in the last was it last week, maybe the week before. It's just the atmosphere they generate there, and you know, it is such an area with such a good sort of like hockey culture and fandom, and you know, for teams like that, you do want them to be in, you know, in the playoffs, and like you were saying with you know, with Montreal, like they are one of the most exciting teams to watch in the NHL. I mean, if the Blackhawks rebuild when all is said and done, which we'll come on to in a moment, but if that Blackhawks team starts to resemble anything like what Montreal have, they've done it right. They've done it fantastically. They're entertaining. They're fast. They're young. They've just got all the right pieces in place to, you know, to be successful for a long time.
It's a single flashpoint for me for the Buffalo Sabres, where you may have seen that there's a fan that was stood behind the bench with a hoodie on that says Sabres rather than Sabres.
I did see that, yeah.
And at the start of the year, we would have ripped on Buffalo for being a joke of a team. The fans can't even get a hoodie with the right name spell on it. But now, it's a feel-good thing. It's a big story. Like, they've given them a new team merch, and all of a sudden this switch, all because they've made the playoffs. It's now suddenly good vibes in Buffalo, whereas before we would have just ragged on them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, no other fan base deserves it more than theirs. They love hockey.
They've been through a lot. They have been through a lot, and like I said, we've absolutely crucified the Sabres at the start of the year. They were the team we didn't want to talk about. They were the team that we were constantly, you know, referencing the picture of Radim Mertka from last year's draft, where he just looks absolutely like disgusted to be wearing that Sabres jersey, and they were just an absolute disaster of a franchise. But they've turned it round massively, and no, they're going to be an outstanding watch. So, the Chicago Blackhawks. Bit of an up and down season, to say the least. There's been some really nice positives. There's been some areas where they're a rebuilding team, and you know, these things do happen. There's been some nights where it's just been an absolute car crash. Obviously, they've made that big coaching change behind the bench this year. They brought in Jeff Blashill. Now, I've been quite up on the Blackhawks this season. I think that regardless of their positioning, obviously with them, you know, being right down the bottom of their division, you can still see the improvement. The points improvement is there. All the young guys you wanted to make steps have made big steps this year. Bedard has gone from being, you know, just this really exciting player to a superstar in the league. You know, we've seen Frank Nazar take some big steps this year. We've seen, on the defense especially, you know, Kaiser and Vlasic, and, you know, Levshinov's had a bit of an up and down year. But, you know, just kind of on the broader scope, you know, what have been your thoughts on the Blackhawks year, sort of as a whole, looking at the big picture of kind of the rebuild and everything, and everything moving forward?
I think you could almost divide this season into 3 seasons for the Blackhawks. Like, there was the start of the year, the first few months, where they're exceeding everybody's expectations, not only, you know, individually with Connor Bedard playing out of his mind, top of the league in scoring, top 5, but just the team as a whole. I mean, everyone was playing their best hockey, and the team was winning, and you had excitement in the fan base of, we could be competing for a wild card spot this year. And then you have kind of that middle portion where you start to get hit with the injury bug. Bedard, Nazar, obviously being the 2 big ones that go down for, you know, Bedard missed 13 games, and there was a lot of overlap too with Frank Nazar. So you're down both your top 2 centers, and then they come back right as the Olympic break starts to happen. They're both still finding their game coming back from injury. Bedard wasn't the same when he came back. And then you have post-Olympic break where it's just been a train wreck most nights. So I feel like you have these 3 different years, and with how it's kind of gone downhill since the start of the year, I think fans forget just how fun this team was to watch at the beginning of the year, and we got that glimpse of what could be and what hopefully is to come starting next year. But that's just rebuilds. I mean, they're not linear. You don't go typically you don't go from the bottom of the league to convincingly in a playoff spot the next year. So you just gotta hope that as next year comes around, that first bit of the season is maybe a bit longer. Maybe they're competitive for a wild card spot until March, or February. March might be a bit of a stretch, but yeah. So I think it's easy to be down right now, because you're right. There's been a ton of ups and downs, but the end of the year has been brutal, and yeah. But I think fans got to stay optimistic. I mean, like you said, Connor Bedard came out of the gates the player we thought he was going to be when we drafted him. Wyatt Kaiser has been the most consistent defenseman all year. Spencer Knight has put up decent numbers in front of an extremely young, inconsistent decor. Artem Levshnov, he's probably had the most up and downs this whole year, but those highs are high, man. And there's periods where he looks dangerous when he's on the ice. But it's all just typical of a rebuild. It's Frank Nazar having slumps this year in his second year, and it's typical of a sophomore player. Levshnov's 20 years old. He's not going to be, a number one defenseman for 82 games out of the year. Like, things are coming together. There's a lot of lows, but there's also a lot to be really excited about. And you throw in what's now a guaranteed top 4 pick this season. So next year is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would echo that massively. And Nathaniel, you've obviously I view a lot of things with my Blackhawks hat on, quite literally, and Ryan doing the same. But Nathaniel, what have been your kind of thoughts on the Blackhawks as someone who doesn't necessarily follow the team week to week or night to night even? But in terms of how they've, your sort of general view of them, because I suppose you're looking at it from more of like a league wide perspective.
Yeah. So for me, they've definitely made a step up this year, which is always good in a rebuild. They're not taking a step back. They're not staying the same. You keep forcing it down my ears about how they've already reached last season's points total with like 20 games left to go. So we're in a good place there. A good thing for a league-wide team to watch is when you are a bad team, with air quotes if you listen audio-wise, they are fun to watch. There are plenty of teams out there who are a poor watch. But the Blackhawks are great to watch. They're a great young team. They're playing great hockey at times. Yes, sometimes they can bend and break. And then they concede a massive amount of goals and they sort of lose their heads a little bit. But progress is being made. They're fun to watch. And therefore, kind of as a neutral, that they're a good... Like I said, they're a good team to follow.
Yeah, and you made a really, really good point, Ryan, about the season kind of being broken down into 3. And I always kind of cast my mind back, and it seems like ages ago now. But that St. Louis game was obviously, it was broadcast on on national TV in the US, and they absolutely they took St. Louis to the cleaners that night. And Bedard was absolutely buzzing, and Nazar was buzzing. They gave that great interview afterwards, and they were talking about how they want to win now, and the vibes were kind of right up here. And Burakovsky managed to recognize what that like square thing was where you put the puck, and things were moving really well. He seems to have forgotten what that is over like the last few months. Honestly, I could talk for an hour or maybe rant for an hour on Andrei Burakovsky, but that's maybe a podcast for the off season. Yeah. Sweet Jesus. But
it's really going to be interesting to see what they do with him this off season. I think fans are going to be after Davidson's head if he's back in the top 9 to start next season. Probably even on the team, but
if he's on planet Earth next season, I think there's going to be a lot of Blackhawks fans, I think, wanting Davidson's head. But like the ups and downs of certain players. I mean, like you said, rebuilds aren't linear. They very much they ebb and flow. They go up and down. Spencer Knight has had some absolutely outrageous performances this year, and I know that a lot of kind of let's call them casual hockey fans will usually look at save percentage and goals against, but it's those kind of when you look at the more fine-grained stats, the goals saved above expected and everything, he's right up there with a lot of these, with a lot of the big goalie names in the league, and I think that he's been a product maybe of playing, like you said, behind an inexperienced decor, especially kind of since Murphy went, and obviously with Dickinson going and Foligno going, obviously they were a massive part of the defensive side of the team as well. And those injuries really just came at the wrong time, for Chicago. And it was Bedard's especially, it was such an innocuous play in like the final second of the game. It was just so frustrating, to see it happen. And obviously Nazar gets a broken jaw, which seems to be just like a theme with these Blackhawks youngsters. I'm sure. I'm praying it doesn't, but I'm sure Frondel's on for a broken jaw next year. That just seems to be just seems to be what happens. They've got bubbles galore in the dressing room.
That's why they're doing fight training in training, so they can practice it.
Yeah,
get some thicker jaws.
Toughen up the jaw a little bit,
Yeah, I sent Nathaniel that video. It was kind of like, look how cool it is that these Blackhawks defensemen are all out there like learning to fight with each other, and Nathaniel's like, nah, it's just like the cringest shit I've ever seen. So
I saw a lot of divide on that.
I get it, and I was having kind of a little look, and obviously there's been a lot of new blood into the team this year. I mean, we've seen Ryan Green, we've seen Nick Lardis kind of up and down this year, and Louis Crevier becoming like an 80-game NHL defenseman, from a 7th round pick, which is just you would almost never see. Sam Rinzel having a bit of an up and down year, Lev Shinov having a bit of an up and down year. Obviously we've seen Boisvert and Frondel come into the team the last few weeks. For me, I think kind of Ryan Green has flown under the radar this year as someone who has been, Ryan Green's not going to be a Hart Trophy winner or anything like that, but as a supplemental kind of top 9 forward, for when this team begins to be competitive again, I've been so impressed with him, and he was someone who, if I recall correctly from the back at like training camp, wasn't really supposed to like make the team out of camp, but just impressed everyone that much that he almost.
Well, he actually got cut.
Down. Yeah, he did.
He got cut before the season opener, and then I'm blanking now. Somebody got injured. Somebody couldn't go, so that he had to turn around and come back, and he just played so well. The whole year they couldn't take him off the team. But yeah, he was cut at the start.
Yeah, it's but he's been so impressive, and what we've seen from Nick Lardis at times, his ability to finish. Obviously, he came off of that massive year in the OHL last year, with some absolutely ridiculous numbers, and I think there was obviously that big concern as to if he was going to be able to translate that to the pro game, and obviously he did really well in Rockford, and then came up and maybe needs a little bit more consistency in his finishing, but generally I've been so impressed with a lot of these guys, and at times this year what's almost been more frustrating is it seems as though it's been the veteran players on the team letting them down at times, as opposed to necessarily the young guys.
Because in a sense, right, like you expect inconsistencies from your young guys, especially the amount of guys we have on the team that are playing their first year pro and are adjusting to an 82-game schedule. You expect those inconsistencies, and I mean the burnout from guys like Ryan Green before the Olympic break. You expect stuff like that to happen, and your veterans are where you want those gaps filled. You don't expect them to go through these major slumps and to get burnt out by a schedule they've done for 7, 8, 9 years, some of these guys. So yeah, that was a little disappointing this year with maybe some of that. I mean, Tyler Bertuzzi has been a positive on that side, though. He's a guy that you would expect out of a veteran to not be consistent. I mean, that's kind of been his game his whole career, and I don't know what it is about Jeff Blashill, but he just unlocks a whole different level of compete within Tyler Bertuzzi.
He does, yeah. And I think on our last weekly breakdown, actually, I think I mentioned to you, Nathaniel, that He'd passed I think it's the 30 goal mark for the first time since he was in Detroit under Jeff Blashill. So yeah, I don't know what it is about the way. I mean, I'm sure every coach in the NHL has that one guy who they want to take with them everywhere they go. And I'm sure that if in 3-4 years down the line, if Jeff Blashill's on another NHL team, I'm sure that he'd be doing anything possible to try and bring Bertuzzi there, because he just seems to know what makes him tick and seems to know what gets the best out of him on a night to night basis.
Probably playing him on the first line.
Yeah, well, even then he's been kind of rotating.
Won't put
in and
him
around.
up there.
Yeah, he's been rotating kind of in and around sort of the top 9 all season. He's been super, and that's one of the great things about Bertuzzi is he's super fluid, super adaptable. He can play up and down the lineup. He's a really sort of adaptable player, and is someone who will he just knows his role, and whatever role he's given, he'll just go out there and execute it. Which every team needs 2 or 3 of those guys, at least, and and I think just to kind of sidetrack to Minnesota, Nathaniel. I mean, you look at their kind of bottom 6, in their forwards, and they've got a lot of guys, the likes of Zuccarello and Hartman and the Felinos, and they've got a lot of guys who they know their role, they know what they're on the team to do, and they go out and execute on a night to night basis.
Yeah. I don't know what much more I could add to that. I was still shook at the fact you're thinking Zuccarello's a bottom 6 player.
Yeah, well, mate, he's like 60.
He got one testicle.
Yeah, he does. He does. One ball Zuccarello. Anton Frondell has come up. He's like 8-9 games into his pro career now. For me, has been absolutely. I mean, he's come out like a man possessed. Really, really impressive start to his NHL career. And I know we got very excited this time last year when Rinzel came up, and when we saw some of these guys sort of coming up, making a few appearances towards the end of the year. But I tell you, if we get over an 82 game season next year, what we've got out of Frondell in this small sample size, there's a hell of a player there.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, I think he exceeded everyone's expectations. Even though I had high expectations, and he still exceeded them. I mean, not just with his point totals. I believe he's at 9 points in 10 games right now. That doesn't really surprise me. I figured we'd get some good production out of him. What surprises me is his all-around game. His game is so complete already at the NHL level. In one of my watch-alongs the other day, we were chatting about him, and I said, besides face-offs, what is an area of this guy's game that doesn't already look good? And we couldn't really come up with anything. He's so good in all 3 zones. He's very physical. He uses his body a lot more than I thought he did. His board work really impresses me. His ability to win puck battles. And then just that hockey IQ that we hear so much about all the time. He's just always in the right areas. His first NHL goal is a great example of that. He had another chance the shift after where he's nowhere to be found, and then all of a sudden he's wide open in the slot. I find that at least a few times a game that happens, and he has a great A opportunity. So his all-around game is just phenomenal. And the fact, too, that he's playing the second-line center role already and driving his own line. He's blown me away with what he's done. And I'm a guy who wanted Michael Misa at the draft, and I will humbly take that back now. Misa's a great player. He's going to be awesome. But Kyle Davidson, I think he made the right pick there. But you made a good point with Sam Rinzel we were very excited for him next year. And I remember saying a lot of he's not going to need any Rockford time. He's going to be a top 4 guy, power play quarterback. And, it's hard not to have the same expectation now of Frondell, but it's definitely important to keep in mind that he'll be 19 next year. And if he does need a stint in Rockford, it's not the end of the world. I don't expect that. I'm going to say it again, just like I did with Rinzel. I don't expect it, but it's that transition to the NHL, even though he's coming from pro hockey, is still a big one, especially over next year. It's going to be an 84 game season. But yeah, super high expectations for him next year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's obviously I think it's a slightly different trajectory for forwards and defensemen. I think in terms of their responsibilities and everything. But I completely agree with with what you've just his ability in all three zones. He's a much better player defensively than I was expecting. He's also like a lot like physically like thicker than I was expecting. Like he's really quite built for a kid of his age. And that one timer especially, I mean, he's got an absolute hammer, and when that first power play is fully realized and it's got everyone on it that you want, and you've got Bedard on the left point and Frondell on the right point, like, my God, like that power play is going to be an absolute weapon for this team moving forward. But I've been super impressed with him, and like you said, that hockey IQ, it's not really something you can teach. A lot of guys, like, you either kind of have it or you don't, and he just knows exactly where to be. He just pops up in the right places, kind of almost seamlessly just kind of ghosts his way in. I mean, potentially, maybe next year teams become a bit more savvy to him, and maybe that we saw that with Frank Nazar initially. Before guys knew what he was about, he was able to kind of get away with a bit more because he was a bit of an unknown entity, and he was able to kind of play his game his way. You might start to see guys kind of doubling up on him or things like that, but I just think that he's a smart player who will just find a way around it regardless. But yeah, I'm kind of super excited to see what he does with a full off season. Hopefully he spends a good amount of time in Chicago kind of getting acclimated to the city, and spending a full off season with an NHL training program, and I'm sure he'll come back with a few extra pounds of muscle in come training camp, and yeah, he's going to be an absolute force.
Yeah, you're definitely right about teams are going to have an extra. They're gonna plan for him next season, right? Which is one of the reasons I've actually been really on board with them splitting Bedard and Frondell up, because if you have a 1-2-3 down the middle of Bedard, Frondell, Nazar, there's no way a team can plan for that. You can't shut that down. 3 dangerous lines, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Hawks go with that, or if they do run him with Bedard next year. But yeah, if you got that 1-2-3 down the middle, you're not stopping everybody. One of those lines is going to break through every night.
Yeah, there's that comparison for me. Maybe a bit early, but I've been super impressed by Frondell as well. I echo what both of you have been saying, and we all know who Bedard is. But McDavid Draisaitl version 2, where they play him same lines at times, they play him like separate lines depending on the needs and how the game's going. You got that flexibility. Knowing that you've also got Frank Nazar who can plug and play second line centre and do a very good job there, allowing that flexibility for Frondell. I think obviously this team has its negatives and improvement points, of course, but I can't see a reason why, with the performances being shown this year, if they can find a way to stretch that out over 82 games, you can't get some really productive plays a la McDavid Draisaitl.
Hopefully just a better supporting cast.
Yeah.
Which it looks like it. I mean, our depth is coming together.
It certainly is, and yeah, you've got a decent goaltender. You've got some really good young defensemen. I'm going to come on to the summer in a moment, but you've got Roman Kantsarov coming. Hopefully, touch wood. All the talk certainly seems to be that they expect him to be here, and that he kind of expects to come over here, and he's been having kind of pretty historic years in the KHL in terms of his point output, and he's had no teenagers had this good of a year, or no sort of young player has had this good of a year since Kaprizov or Panet, and he's getting all those kind of comparisons, and he is someone who could come in and drop right in on that top 6 as well, and will almost be like an additional free agent signing, which for I want to say he was taken in the 2nd round maybe, could end up being an absolute steal If he can come over and provide even, if he can come over and provide what he has done in the KHL this year, that's just another weapon to add to this growing arsenal of, of offensive talent that the Hawks have.
Yeah, I agree, and like you said, it's kind of going to be like that free agent signing, right? And a lot of fans, I think, don't want to hear that. They want that big name, the Brady Tkachuk, the Matthew Nyes, X name, whoever, right? But I think in reality, it's probably going to be Roman Kanserov. He's been playing pro hockey for years now, and he's shown that it's a different game over there to an extent, but he's shown that he can handle professional hockey, especially at his size, which is really impressive. And I honestly think he's going to be I think he could be a great line mate for someone like Bedard, because you're right, he's going to be a top 6 player, ideally. But I think he's someone that will play great on line with Connor Bedard, who views himself more as a playmaker, and you put him together with a goal scorer like Kanserov. I think that's going to be the big ad this offseason, at least in the forward group.
Kaprizov.
Yeah.
David Draisaitl and now Kaprizov.
Yep. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
It's going to be like Dynasty 2.0, honestly, when it all comes together. So kind of looking ahead to the summer, then. I know you mentioned, obviously the Kanserov will probably be the kind of big addition. I am kind of conflictedly in agreement with you there. I do think that there needs to be some sort of step forward made, though, in terms of adding some sort of NHL help, and actually kind of having sat and kind of reflected on it over the last week or two. And again, it all kind of purely depends on who's available and what deals you can go and make. I would actually be more inclined to make that big splash maybe on the defensive end than necessarily in the forward group. I think your forward group is looking, pretty solid, and almost you're looking up and down this roster and you're not actually sure where guys are going to fit kind of in the long term. But defensively, I mean, obviously they've got
Jason Robertson then.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Jason Robertson's available, gimme. However, I just think that I just think looking at that defense, especially, I think Alex Vlasic is the oldest one there at, what is he, 24, and I just think that it's very risky, I think, to go into next season with a very, very young defensive group. Obviously, they've had Matt Grzelcyk this year. I don't know if they'll be looking at bringing Grzelcyk back or whether they'll let him go and try and bring someone else in. But if they're going to make a big splash, for me, I think being on that back end, I think would be more in line with what this team needs.
I agree. I think that is where they need it most. Like you said, the forward core is it's coming together. You can kind of start to see who's going to slot where roughly in the long term. And I think they definitely need a veteran. Like you're saying, maybe they bring back Matt Grzelcyk, although I think if you're going to bring in a veteran, there's probably better guys to have than Matt Grzelcyk in terms of a leadership position. Nothing against Matt Grzelcyk, he's been great, but I think just for the sole purpose of having a veteran, there's probably a better guy out there. But I think this offseason is really going to show us where Kyle Davidson's head is at, because there's two routes you can go here. I mean, we know he's a really patient guy who believes in his draft picks and his rebuild, and we're going to see, does he want to try to get into winning mode, and does he want to add a veteran, or does he believe in the young guys and he wants to let them, take the reins still? And because I think if you go all kids next year on the back end, all under 25, there's not much hope to push for the playoffs, because there's going to be a lot of inconsistency. Like what we've seen at the end of this year, some games are just going to be terrible. I mean, there's going to be highs, but there's going to be really low lows. So I think we're kind of going to see how quickly he wants to push forward the rebuild here in terms of if he adds a defenseman on the back end. But I'm in full agreement with you. I think you need somebody back there, and this is the first offseason that I've gone on record and said now's the time to add. I was all for letting the kids develop and figuring out who's who and who will play where, and I think we know enough now that we know, okay, maybe you want to bring in a winger or a top six forward. you definitely got to bring in the defenseman, I think, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, we're going into year 4 of Connor Bedard here, and and that's kind of the timeline I think that a lot of fans are using as their tracker. He's going into year 4, his second contract. And I think you need to start showing some intent and some willingness to to put a team together that's going to be playing competitive games in like you said before, February, maybe even into early March, optimistically. And they've got the ammunition to pull off, barring a small handful of names, they can go and get who they want at this point. You've got an absolute plethora of young defensemen. You've got forwards, coming out of your ears. If they want to go and make a deal, they've got loads of draft capital as well. They could go and make that deal. I'm not entirely sure kind of who that player is. I'm sure no one really anticipated seeing Noah Dobson traded to the Canadiens last year. But there's usually a name that comes up around the draft who you're not expecting to kind of go on the block, but that they end up there through whether it be someone with a year left on their contract, or maybe there's some kind of behind the scenes disputes that we're not kind of privy to. If they wanted to go and kick Vancouver while they're down and try and make a deal for Zeev Boyum, that'd be fantastic. But again, that's not a veteran who's going to come in and change things. But I'm not sure who that player is right now. But hopefully, Kyle Davidson is keeping his phone on loudspeaker, and he's getting ready to make any call humanly possible, because I'm with you. I've been very, very much of the opinion that you need to let this rebuild kind of flourish. Me and Nathaniel were speaking in the off season when we first started this show about Mitch Marner, and that the Blackhawks could have gone out and offered Mitch Marner $15-16 million a year, but at that particular time and where Mitch Marner is in his career, what does that accomplish for this team? It doesn't really it doesn't move the needle in the long-term picture of the rebuild. Now, forwards-wise, we've seen all the names banded around. We've seen Robertson, we've seen Rob Thomas, we've seen Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Nyes, and we'll wait and see if anything kind of happens there. I'm almost maybe secondary of the opinion that if Dallas end up signing up Jason Robertson, which I think they probably will, I'd be taking a look at someone like Maverick Bourque, took that really team-friendly deal this year in order to kind of make things work. But if they pay all that money out to Robertson, I don't think Bourque's going to be looking at taking another cheap contract to stick around, and that could end up being a more doable deal. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of spitballing here at this point, but yeah, I think in essence there needs to be something done this summer just to try and kind of nudge everything a bit further forward.
Yeah, and you nailed it. When you said he has the pieces to go out and pretty much get whoever's available. I mean, you've got an abundance of prospects at every position, goaltending, defense, and forwards. You've got, countless more first and second round picks in the next few years. Like, he's got the pieces to go get essentially anybody that it becomes available, and it's just a matter of who. And like you said, there's always going to be names that come up last minute at the draft or out of nowhere in the middle of the offseason. So there's definitely names to speculate, but it could be anybody. But I hope he does pull the trigger. I mean, he's shown a willingness to want to make a deal if it makes sense. But you're right, year 4 of Connor Bedard, like, add to what you have. Now, give them that push. And I always use the example of, I feel like the beginning of the year, when they were playing so good, I think they earned the right to get somebody on this team. I mean, they showed that, hey, we're ready to start taking this next step. Give us some supporting pieces here. So I really hope that this is the offseason he does something. And if he doesn't, I think it's almost the first time, at least for me, I'm willing to talk, okay, like, hot seat maybe, like, like you said, year 4, Connor Bedard, all your pieces are here. You've done the first part, which is drafting. Now build the team, and now's the time to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, for me, Kyle Davidson's job security hasn't even been a question, more or less since he, more or less since he stepped into the role. And for what it's worth, I think his management of the rebuild up until this point has been stellar. His draft picks have predominantly panned out kind of as expected so far. Obviously, there's quite a few of those picks, your Spellices and your Wests and Nestersills and, the guys who we're not going to see for a couple of years yet. I'm super excited to see whatever Mason West becomes. I think he's just such a unicorn, and he could end up being, an absolute freak in this game, or he could end up going and playing in the NFL. At this point, we just don't know. Like it could really be anything. But if we reach game 1 of 84 next season, and there hasn't been an addition of some sort of note made to this roster, I think I think that seat starts to get hot for the first time, and he's going to have to really consider sort of how he kind of moves forward with it. Nathaniel, you look puzzled there. Is that surprising to hear from your perspective, or?
No, I've just been pondering. We kind of, you mentioned Ryan put his Davidson might be on a hot seat and stuff like that, and it's almost like doom projecting you two about this team. Like, you see the promise, you see the potential, but you kind of almost expecting it not to happen or not to work. But I'm sat here just thinking, well, actually, for the past few years, we've kind of set the expectations, and Chicago have pretty much met those expectations. And what we've seen coming into this off-season is a clear strategy. I think everyone's on the same page in terms of a big signing. I just think it will be done and progress will be made. The next step will be reached. It's a patient rebuild built on quality over quantity. You're not going out there panic buying lots of free agents and making trades that doom your off-season and stuff. Why are you guys doom scrolling it?
You're right. You don't want to end up like the Rangers, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just the inherent nature of being a sports fan. I think we always just kind of picture the worst. But yeah, I mean, look, I am 96% happy with this rebuild. I think it's been, more or less from day one, where, which, I mean, for me, the start of the rebuild was the day they traded. It was when they traded DeBrincat. It was when they traded Doc. At that point, the indication that we are blowing this up. We are starting from below ground zero. And, everything from then up until now, I'm super happy with. I'm super happy with the picks they've made, the moves they've made. Like you said, they haven't gone out and given, first round picks for like middle six forwards or anything like that. They've managed their assets really well, and as a result, what we've now got is an absolute, arsenal of materials, picks, players, prospects, everything to go and basically pull off something big. And I just think that now is the time to do it. And I think there's just a little bit of hesitancy because Davidson hasn't actually been put in this position before, where he's needed to go out and make a big trade. And obviously, with this being his first GMing job, I think where the kind of skeptical nature of it comes from is because we've never seen it before. We don't know if he can do it. We know he can draft well. We know he can trade well. I don't think there's been a single trade during this rebuild where you're shaking your head going, God, Kyle Davidson got absolutely fleeced on that one. He's generally, traded really, really well. I mean, he took on picks for Mikheyev. He took on a pick for Mrazek. He has done really well in that regard. But now it's like that final thing of, can you add that big fish? And I think because we haven't seen it yet.
Good at getting the money, but can you spend it?
Exactly, yeah. So as we move into the draft, I kind of did a draft rundown from kind of 1 to 10 in terms of who's ranked where, etc. in our last episode. Now, Chicago are guaranteed a top 4 pick. Now, with one eye on the draft, Ryan, what are you, depending where they land, what are your thoughts with kind of Chicago's first round pick? Do they, if they land at 1, is it McKenna or Stenberg, or what are your thoughts on the upcoming draft?
Yeah, I mean, if they land at 1, I'm still on Team McKenna. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they take Stenberg, I'm not gonna go cry about it. I'll be happy. But it's a 1A 1B thing for me. Like, yeah, I would take McKenna, but they take Stenberg, I'm not gonna complain, right? Outside of that, if they're in that 3 or 4 spot, I'm open to a trade. Like, if they draft, a defenseman like a Carroll's or a guy like that, or a Chase Reed or a Verhoff, I'll be happy with that too. But it just creates more of that same issue of logjam of young guys. So I don't know. I mean, I that's kind of a boring answer of, if they do this, I'll be happy. If they do that, I'll be happy. If they do this, I'll be happy. But I mean, I'm not going to complain with a 4th overall pick. You just add another giant, another prospect. But yeah, outside of the top 2, I think you should be looking at least what can we get for this. But yeah, outside that top 2, I would probably lean toward a defenseman. Reed,
Yeah.
Carroll's or Verhoff.
Yeah, for sure. And even I've been really interested in Albert Smits as well. I mean, obviously he played at the Olympics for Latvia as well. He's a kid who just oozes confidence. When he's on the ice.
Yeah.
Already got great experience at his age as well. And I'm very much with you. I'm kind of praying. I just want the Blackhawks to land the 2nd overall pick. I think that is just the easiest pick to make, because we've seen it with Artem Levshinov, like the Levshinov Demidov rhetoric. I mean, I was bored of it like the day after the draft. I mean, for what it's worth, I was absolutely of the opinion they should have taken Demidov. However, they took Levshinov, and that's absolutely fine. Levshinov is going to end up being a number 1 defenseman on this team. He's going to be an absolute stud. I've got no concerns about that whatsoever. But I just think if you end up with number 1, whoever you end up picking, it's just going to be compared to the other. If you end up taking McKenna, the minute that Stenberg has a highlight play, just the fan narrative is going to be, I should have taken Stenberg. And I just think you get the 2nd overall pick, you just take the one that's left. And it just makes everything way easier. And then at that point, now obviously, if they end up with the 2nd overall pick and Stenberg went number 1 and they end up taking Verhoff, then, that almost doesn't bear thinking about. But I'm very much of the opinion of yourself, like, 3 or 4. I mean, from the rankings I was looking at the other day, it was Verhoff at 3 and Reed at 4. I think you end up in the same problem, exactly like you said. Like, okay, you're adding another great young defenseman, but you're adding another guy who's kind of 2 to 3 years away from being consistently sort of within the NHL, making an impact night in, night out. Not every young defenseman is Matthew Schaefer. Now, yeah. I think that you've got the, like we said, you've got the ammunition, you've got the picks, the prospects, you've got everything. If you've got like a 3rd overall pick or a 4th overall pick, that instantly becomes a very, very attractive proposition to a team. And maybe someone who maybe wasn't on the block before maybe starts to become a bit more available if the team dealing that player knows that, okay, we've maybe got a guy who's sort of 27, 28, maybe doesn't fit in with our sort of timeline. Maybe we'll look to move him for this pick. And it's certainly, if I'm Kyle Davidson and the phone rings, I'm not clicking ignore. I'm certainly picking it up, and I'm listening to whatever people have to offer. And maybe that pick is the key to getting, the big name ticket that you want. And we know what Davidson's like as well. Like, he'll look at trading back into the first round. I'm sure if they do trade the the 3rd or 4th overall pick, it won't be that's it, they're not picking in the first round at all. Like, they'll still probably end up making at least 2, I reckon, within the first round in of itself, regardless. So, but yeah, I'm very much of the school of thought that it's an option that you entertain and at least discuss. If that happens to be where you land, or even if you land the number 1 pick and the team at number 2, whether it be, you know, Vancouver or something, if they really, really, really want one of those two guys, if they really, really, really want McKenna, and they want to, you know, swap places and they throw in a sweetener, that's fine by me as well. You know, I've got absolutely no issues with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think from May 5th draft lottery up until you're on the clock on the draft floor, I would like Kyle Davidson to, assuming they fall out of the top 2, I expect Kyle Davidson to have at least a couple potential deals lined up of, okay, knowing from May 5th we have the 3rd or 4th pick to the draft floor, like, I expect him to be on the phone, even if he's not, you know, convinced I'm going to trade it, but you better be looking around at all your options, because somebody out there is going to pay. You know, I look at like a team like the Leafs, if you're looking at Matthew Nyes, well, if we have the 3rd overall pick, you know, they could sure use a Keaton Verhoff. They don't have anybody on that back end. They don't have a guy like that. I don't know. I would hope that whatever route he goes, I just trust that he'll have done his research on what he could possibly do.
Yeah.
I trust Kyle Davidson. Like, I think he's done a great job. I mean, like you said, I think, what was the number you said, like 97% happy with the rebuild? I'm right up there with you. Yeah, I wanted Demidov too, for the record, but yeah, I'm also sick of that conversation. I mean, I love Levchinov. I have full confidence in his ability to be a number 1 guy. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with his job so far. And this offseason, though, this is where it could sway a little bit, right? Depending on what he does.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's certainly going to be interesting. And I think was it May 5th you said was the draft lottery. That's you know, between then, I mean, it's going to be. I mean, we're going to be covering it extensively over the summer. I'm sure you probably will be as well. There's going to be 1,000,001 hypothetical trades thrown out there. You know, I saw a hypothetical trade on Twitter earlier that involved Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes coming to the Chicago Blackhawks. I was like, right, okay, yeah, we're approaching silly season, and it's just like it just starts to get ridiculous. Before we kind of wrap things up, I just want to hit you with a quick fire, a quickish fire question. Just moving back to the playoffs as a whole, who have you got for the cup right at this moment in time?
Oh,
not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, you know, there's obviously favorites like there is every year. I mean, the Edmonton, Colorado, but I'm fully into who's hot when the season ends. Like, I think that can do a lot for a team. Buffalo, for example, I mean, looking at what they've done this year, they've been the top team in the NHL since, I forget the date, it's like January something, I think, or December something. So I think you ride the hot hand. So I'm liking Buffalo to make a deep run, to be honest with you. I mean, you can't count out Edmonton, you can't count out Tampa, teams like that. But I don't know, if I'm picking a team today, yeah, give me Buffalo.
Nice.
What about you guys?
Nathaniel, do you have a pick for the cup? Are you going to go with Minnesota, or are you going to go someone else?
Of course, I want to pick Minnesota, but also I like to back up my props. At the start of the season, I predicted Colorado would win the Western, and Carolina would win the Eastern, and it turns out they're probably going to finish top of their respective conferences. So I think if they meet in the Stanley Cup Finals, that will be a great matchup with Colorado winning out. But that's all. They'll have to beat the President's curse with that. But obviously, my heart's with Minnesota. Naturally.
Yeah, I think there's I think there is. I have a mild concern that Colorado haven't played a meaningful game of hockey in kind of like 2 months. And I think they've almost, they're almost kind of sleepwalking their way into the playoffs. It's almost like the curse of them being too good. We saw it with that Bruins team that shattered every regular season record and then went out in the first round of the playoffs. I think it's always slightly concerning when you have a team that just propels themselves into the playoffs. They clinch at the in the middle of March, and they kind of end up just not quite up to their maximum gear.
Yeah.
I'm
But they're going to play the Kings. They're going to play the Kings in the first round, though. And then who knows next? But Dallas and Minnesota are going to beat the proverbial shit out of each other for 7 games, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a crime that's a first round matchup.
It's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
That
And
game the
then
other night was
got the
was
Pacific.
yeah. Oh God, the Pacific Division. I mean, that's been the Pacific Division has been something this year. I don't know if I've got anything particularly good to say about it, but yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that I think I'm completely with you, Nathaniel, that I think Minnesota and Dallas are going to go 7 games, I hope, and they are going to absolutely pummel the life out of each other. I really fancy Dallas for the Cup this year. It just depends how they come out of that first round against me. If they win it in 5 games, I think it could be their year. But if they come out of it, battered and bruised from a 7-game series, and they've maybe got an injury or two here or there, then they're potentially going to be in in a bit of a tough bind. But I'm kind of with you, Ryan. It's you look at Buffalo, they're that unknown entity. They've ridden the hot hand from pretty much the start of 2026, and they've just been on an absolute flyer, and kind of cast me back to sickeningly so when St. Louis won the Cup, and they were bottom of the NHL at like Christmas, and then just went on an absolute tear and won the
January
Cup.
1st, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was one of the hardest watches. As a Blackhawks fan, watching them go all the way. But I think Buffalo could have that similar kind of energy to them. But yeah, I can't wait to see it all play out.
A sneaky pick, too, that I like is if they can get consistent goaltending, Ottawa is a team that is up there with anybody when they're on. And when they're getting goaltending, they can play with anybody. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do as well.
I'm so glad you said that, because I've been backing them all year, and Matt's just been so down on them.
I was
validated my entire existence.
I certainly have.
When they're good, they're a really good team.
They certainly are. They certainly are. And when they're on it, like you said, they can go toe to toe with anyone. Look, Ryan, this has been so much fun. Absolutely loved having you on here. It's been great being able to kind of digest the Blackhawks season as a whole. I feel somewhat like I've had a really good therapy session, being able to talk it out with someone and have and kind of lay out the plan for next season. It's been absolutely awesome having you here. Before we wrap up, please plug everything you've got. Where can we find you? Where can we watch you? Where can we find more of your content?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I mean, same. It's been awesome coming on talking to you guys. We'll have to do it again, and next time I'll polish up on my Minnesota Wild knowledge, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff to talk about there too for next time. But yeah, you can find me across all platforms, Blackhawks Conversation, Ryan McGregor on Twitter. Yeah, Blackhawks coverage, Blackhawks content. It's a place to be. So, Blackhawks Conversation across the board.
Lovely stuff. And yeah, as as I can, firmly attest to the fact that if you want a quality, emotively packed, great conversation, great guys there in the chat, go and watch Ryan's post game coverage. It's absolutely outstanding. Is there anything further from yourself, Nathaniel, before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for your time, Ryan. It's been great to speak to you, great to meet you, and you've almost convinced me to be a Blackhawks fan.
Almost. It'll happen. Between the two of us, Matt, we can do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll break him surely over the course of the year. When Quinn Hughes signs in Chicago, that'll be the turning point for Nathaniel, I'm sure.
That'll be the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Look, yeah, as you say, you are welcome back on here anytime, Ryan. Like I said, we'll have to do this again. Yeah, would absolutely love to have you back on.
For sure.
Well, as Ryan said, guys, you can go find all of his content on the Blackhawks Conversation across the board, and also Ryan McGregor on Twitter as well. You can find us both on X and Instagram at the PBP Podcast. You can also find us on Gmail at penaltyboxperspective@gmail.com if you want to send in any emails or thoughts on the show or anything along those lines. You can also watch the podcast in video format even on YouTube and Spotify. If you want to go and subscribe over to the Penalty Box Perspectives YouTube channel, you are more than welcome. Also, as well, please consider giving us a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us kind of push the podcast forward as we come to the end of our first season, and show Ryan some love as well. We absolutely love having guests on the show. It's absolutely massive for us being able to speak to people from all over the world. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being with us, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.